Hello, everyone. Father Draper here from St. Anne Catholic Church in Dixon, Illinois, where I have the great privilege of being with Sister Mary Bernadette Morse from the Franciscan Sisters in the Martyr St. George. As you all know, we are coming up on Catholic Schools Week, and there's a special day in that week dedicated to talking about vocations. And so it's a great privilege to talk with Sister Bernadette today, especially about the vocation to the consecrated religious life. So, Sister, thank you for joining us. And could you tell us just a little bit about yourself, including a little bit about your family and where you're from?
Absolutely. It's a joy to be with you, Father Draper, and to be able to join your parish family, your Catholic school family in this Catholic Schools Week. So yes, a little bit about me. I'm from Iowa, Northern Iowa, and grew up there with my four sisters. And I'm blessed to be the middle child. I don't know if anyone else is a middle child that's listening, but I feel like, oh yeah, there you go, Father yourself. I feel like it was the best of both worlds. So I was raised in a Catholic home, but it was unique because unfortunately my parents, they split when I was 4 years old and ended up getting a divorce when I was a little bit older. So I was raised in a Catholic family, but my father is not Catholic. And so every other weekend, I would go to my dad's house, and we would not go to mass that weekend since he was Baptist. But being with my mom Monday through Friday, and then the weekends that we would be with her, she taught us the faith very well and would take us not only to mass on the weekend, but also every single day. So that's a little bit about my family and where I'm from.
Well, thank you. And how did you come to know in that experience the Lord in particular and his call to you to the religious life?
Great question. So I can just see God's hand very much in how he really does use all things for our good. And I don't know if you know, if all of you students know the Bible verse in scripture where it says, for all things work for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And when I look back at my family and I realize how I came to know Jesus, I really do believe that he took what could have been a great suffering, which was like growing up in a split home, and used that cross to really show forth that he was a very good father, and that Jesus Christ really did start and found the Catholic Church and wanted to be close with us through the Eucharist. So through daily mass, I don't know about how many of you can imagine going to mass every single day, but for me, I loved it. It was through mass and through the other sacraments in our church that I realized that God was not someone that was far away, but he was so intimately close, and so close that he wanted me to receive him right on a daily basis through the Eucharist. And so first off, I have to say that I came to know Jesus through the sacraments, but also through just a very faithful mom. So my mom was really good about teaching me and my sisters about what life was really all about. And I remember her saying, all that really matters is that you do God's will. All that really matters is that you do God's will. Everything else in your life, like things can be disappointing, and you might lose something, and things might break, and maybe you'll lose a friendship. But in the end, like if you know that you're doing God's will, it is enough. And so I feel like even in the midst of like the instability of life, there was always this constant reassurance that if I was doing what God wanted me to do, then I could be happy. Because I knew that even if it was tough in the moment, he was with me and it would lead to eternal happiness. So I really think that I have to give God great thanks for my mom and the wisdom that she passed on to me. Also, when I look at the people that God put in my life. So, Father, I actually believe you know one of my friends, or if you don't know him that well, Mitch Beadle. Yes. Okay, great. So growing up in this Catholic home, I ended up, for a while, kind of living a two-faced life. I would say I had like a conversion probably when I was in 7th grade or going to 8th grade. And at that point in my life, I kind of was trying to seek the happiness that the world offers. But and it's fun for like 5 minutes here, and for how long the excitement of being noticed by people, and the excitement of I guess the attention that the world can offer you. I remember just seeking that happiness of like trying to fit in and trying to climb the competitive ladder at school, and realizing that although those moments of success brought like a temporary happiness, it was more like cotton candy. It disappeared almost as quickly as I enjoyed it. And so I began to think deeply about like what real happiness was when I was in 8th grade. It probably was because at that point, my oldest sister entered the convent. So Sister Catherine Marie is now a missionary sister in Russia. And her initial discernment, that's a big word, just means like asking God, what is his will, right? Sifting through what God is saying to us in our lives, and how our situations that he has put us in, how he speaks through them. So she began to ask that question, is God calling me to religious life? Obviously, she heard God's call. She went to enter the convent. I was going into 8th grade that summer. And I remember going and visiting and thinking, wow, this is going to be a strange experience. I'm going to a convent. No one does this anymore. And my friends were teasing me, and they're like, you're going to enter the convent. And I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way that I'm going to become a sister. So I remember going into this convent and opening this door where the sisters would gather with guests that were visiting. And I was immediately struck by the joy, by the authenticity, by sisters from early in from like 19 years old, early 20s, all the way up into their 70s and 80s, just a large group of sisters, but all of them full of joy. And I remember like as this 8th grader, just being struck and thinking, someday I'm going to be a sister. And I knew I was not called to that particular community, but deep down there was a seed that I like was put in touch with that day, a seed of what I believe was the call to a religious life. So fast forward a little bit into high school. God also put in my life not only these beautiful sisters and awesome family, but a good friend, Mitchell. So Mitch, I mentioned him earlier. He is someone I think could see in me the fact that God was probably calling me to religious life before I saw it. And I mean, yes, I did have that moment when I was in 8th grade, but I'm kind of get lost in the present moment anyway. And so I kind of like put that thought in the background and, kept living my high school life and doing things that high schoolers do, just trying to just live my normal life. And Mitchell, I had met him at my confirmation retreat, and he kind of just became like an older brother to me and started looking out for me. I want to say like I think he saw that I was capable of more, capable of praying more, capable of seeking the Lord more intentionally. And he was one of those friends that was just totally himself. I could tell he wasn't there he wasn't there for me, for his own happiness. He was there because he really cared about me. And so I remember him asking me, like, do you think the Lord might be calling you to religious life? And I was like, as anyone listening, yes. And I was like, and he could see that when I was with the Lord, I think he saw that I was most alive. And I'm sure that's true for everyone, but there was something very particular, especially about Eucharistic adoration, that drew me. And so one day I remember asking Mitchell, how do you pray? And he said, I don't know if this is really how he prayed, but this is what he told me. He said, I want you to not speak very much. I want you to just listen. And I was like, okay, so you just want me to go be with the Lord. And actually that's what I would do very frequently. I wouldn't even, so when I was able to, I would go to Eucharistic adoration. But when I wasn't able to go to the adoration chapel, I would just find our church in town, and I would go there like late at night on Friday. And I would just sit in the presence of the Lord in the darkness, and I wouldn't say anything. And then when I was in high school, I also ended up getting a job at Dairy Queen, and God uses all things, especially ice cream. So I remember getting this job at Dairy Queen and realizing there was an adoration chapel on my way home. And so I would stop and I would go into the adoration chapel and I would just sit there. And I would look at Jesus and he would look at me. And it was there that I realized who I was, because I came to know who Jesus was. And I remember, listening to St. John Paul II, who was Pope at the time when I was growing up, and like realizing that what he said about Jesus was true, that Jesus really was alive today. And Jesus really was calling the young people to be great saints today. And I found myself sitting before Jesus, and it wasn't that I heard God calling, but it was this desire that just grew and grew and grew in my heart to love Jesus the way that he loved me. And I sensed that Jesus loved me as a bridegroom loves his bride. And how could I say no to that? So that is how I learned the Lord's call to religious life for me.
It sounds like that desire for religious life really grew in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, that you spent some time before the Eucharist exposed in the monstrance. That's what you mean by Eucharistic adoration, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Father.
Wonderful. And how have you experienced religious life? So you entered a religious community, the Franciscan Sisters of the Martyr St. George. Could you tell us about what living the life of a sister is like?
Absolutely. Yes. So after I realized that Jesus was calling me to be a religious sister, I shouldn't say I began. Mitchell right away was like, well, now that you know you have a vocation, you're never really going to know where he's calling you unless you go visit. And so I began to visit different communities. And you mentioned, Father, that I'm a sister of St. Francis of the Martyr St. George. And so there are different types of communities. There is Dominican sisters, Franciscan sisters, Benedictine sisters, and these are all religious orders that have been called to radically follow Jesus in his poverty, in his chastity, and in his obedience, with a particular flavor, if you will. And so when I heard about Franciscan sisters, and I believe it was Mitchell who told me first, that St. Francis was completely taken by the incarnation of Jesus, that the fact that God became man, that was his passion, his joy, his everything. And I personally believe that to be Franciscan is to live your humanity. Like, Dominicans seek Christ through study and prayer. I believe that Franciscans encounter Christ by living their humanity to the fullest, also through prayer. But there's something human that is emphasized by the fact that our God became man. And so in coming to enter the Sisters of St. Francis of the Martyr St. George, I realized again, how God takes our daily life, our friendships, our relationships, our studies, our prayer time, our waking, our sleeping, our working, everything that we see in our everyday life. And that is where he meets us. That is where he sanctifies us. That is where we find the Lord and we are found by him. And so being a religious sister is an adventure every day. Yes, we have a rhythm of the day. We call it an horarium. So we wake up early in the morning. We begin with morning prayer, which is the liturgy of the hours, which, as you know, Father, is prayed by all priests and religious throughout the day. So we begin with morning prayer as a community, but then we have 30 minutes to just silently sit in the presence of the Lord with the scriptures and to meditate on the gospel. And in meditating on the gospel, we seek to hear Christ. We seek to listen. What is he saying to me today? What is his particular call to conversion? To conversion is to turn back to the Lord, right? And so I love the religious life, particularly because it's in my face every day that today is the day that Jesus calls me to conversion. Today is the day that he calls me back to his heart. And so religious life is a radical imitation. We use the word imitation, but I feel like that word falls short because it's more like a radical participation in Jesus's poverty, chastity, and obedience. That Jesus is my only treasure, that Jesus is my only love, and that Jesus's will, the will of the Father, is really all that matters. And in allowing Jesus, in choosing Jesus as my only love, somehow that transforms my heart into a heart of a universal mother, into a universal sister who becomes available to all. And so this looks very practical, like in our apostolate. Apostolate is a big word which just refers to the fact that the Lord sends us out as he sends the apostles into active service. So I teach at a Catholic high school here in Rock Island, Alleman Catholic High School, and I teach theology. And it's in this daily prayer, in this daily community life with other sisters, praying with them, eating with them, and then going out into the apostolate where I seek to be given away as Christ was given away by the Father. Seek to give myself to Jesus by giving myself to the student in front of me, to the coworker next to me, to whoever Jesus puts in my path. So I find that even though I have a plan for the day, it is really the Lord who has a plan. And the quest is to listen. Where is he calling me to love like him better today than I did yesterday?
Thank you so much, sister, for making that sacrifice and for being a sister to me and to all of us at Alleman, and sharing your story with our own students and our parishioners here at St. Anne. So a happy World Day of Prayer for Consecrated Life on February 2nd to you and to your sisters in your convent. And again, friends, we just thank Sister Bernadette for joining us and for spending this time with us to share with us during our Catholic Schools Week about the consecrated religious life. So God bless you, sister, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much. And may God give all of you the courage to say yes to whatever he asks of you. Don't be afraid. Thank you, Father.